When we picture prehistory, we often imagine a lonely procession of human ancestors slowly evolving until modern humans finally appeared. That image turns out to be completely wrong. For most of our evolutionary history, Earth was crowded with different kinds of humans. Not animals that looked vaguely human. Not primitive apes, actual human species. Some walked upright, some buried their dead, some crafted sophisticated stone tools, some hunted enormous Ice Age mammals, some probably wore clothing, some may even have produced art. For tens of thousands of years, modern humans shared the planet with close relatives who looked remarkably similar to us. They lived beside us, sometimes they competed, sometimes they avoided one another, and sometimes they had children together. The story of humanity is not a straight line. It is a braided river of many human species whose paths repeatedly crossed before nearly all eventually disappeared. Only one branch survived: us. Scientists now recognize numerous species within the human family. Some existed hundreds of thousands of years ago. Others survived until surprisingly recent times. Some may have been alive when the Egyptian pyramids were still thousands of years in the future. This discovery completely transformed anthropology. Instead of imagining one human species marching through history, we now understand that evolution created an entire family of humans. Each adapted differently. Each occupied different environments. Each solved survival in unique ways. Some became giants. Some became remarkably small. Some developed extraordinary physical strength. Others evolved in isolation on distant islands. The fossil record is continually expanding, revealing that our family tree is far more diverse than anyone imagined only a few decades ago. Perhaps no extinct human has been misunderstood more than the Neanderthal. For generations, they were portrayed as dim-witted cave dwellers. Modern science paints an entirely different picture. Neanderthals lived throughout Europe and Western Asia for nearly 400,000 years. They survived brutal Ice Age climates. Their bodies were powerfully built. Short limbs helped conserve heat. Broad chests housed enormous lungs. Their brains averaged slightly larger than modern human brains. They mastered sophisticated stone technology. Evidence suggests they cared for injured individuals for years. Some intentionally buried their dead. Others created ornaments from eagle talons, shells, and pigments. When modern humans entered Europe roughly 45,000 years ago, Neanderthals had already been thriving there for hundreds of thousands of years. They were not primitive failures. They were highly successful humans. Denisovans represent one of the greatest scientific discoveries of the 21st century. Remarkably, scientists discovered them not from complete skeletons but from DNA. In 2008, archaeologists excavated a tiny finger bone from Denisova cave in Siberia. At first glance, it appeared unremarkable. Then geneticists sequenced its DNA. The results were astonishing. It belonged to an entirely unknown human species. No one had ever recognized them before. Today we know Denisovans ranged across enormous parts of Asia. Their genes survive most strongly among populations of Papua New Guinea, Aboriginal Australians, many indigenous Filipinos, Tibetans, and other Asian populations. One Denisovan gene even helps modern Tibetans survive at extremely high altitudes. Ancient DNA revealed a population that fossils alone never could. On the Indonesian island of Flores, scientists uncovered one of the strangest members of the human family. Adults stood only about 3.5 feet tall. Because of their size, they became known as the Hobbits. These tiny humans lived on an isolated island for tens of thousands of years. Island isolation often drives unusual evolution. Large animals become smaller. Small animals sometimes become larger. Floresiensis appears to represent this phenomenon applied to humans. Despite their small brains, they manufactured sophisticated stone tools. They hunted dwarf elephants known as stegodons. Evidence suggests they survived until roughly 50,000 years ago. If those dates are correct, modern humans may have encountered them. South Africa produced another extraordinary surprise. Homo naledi possessed a fascinating mixture of ancient and modern features. Its brain remained relatively small, yet its hands looked surprisingly human. Its feet resembled ours. Its body proportions suggest remarkable climbing ability. Perhaps even more mysterious is where their fossils were found. Hundreds of bones lay deep inside an incredibly difficult cave system. Some researchers believe this may represent intentional placement of the dead. If true, it would suggest ritual behavior by a species with a much smaller brain than previously thought capable. The debate continues. But Homo naledi reminds us how much remains unknown about human evolution. In 2019, scientists announced yet another human species. Homo luzonensis lived on Luzon Island in the Philippines. Only a handful of bones and teeth have been discovered. Yet those remains display an intriguing combination of ancient and modern characteristics. Like floresiensis, luzonensis evolved in island isolation. Its existence reinforces an emerging pattern. Ancient Asia hosted remarkable human diversity. Many different human populations occupied forests, islands, mountains, and coastlines simultaneously. The human story is proving far richer than anyone imagined. For many years, scientists believed that modern humans simply replaced earlier humans without interacting. DNA overturned that assumption. As Homo sapiens expanded from Africa roughly 60,000 to 70,000 years ago, they encountered Neanderthals in the Middle East and Europe. Farther east, they encountered Denisovans. These meetings were not merely brief encounters. They resulted in families, children, grandchildren, entire generations whose descendants still live today. Our ancestors were not isolated populations. They became part of one another's genetic history. One of the most profound discoveries in genetics is that ancient interbreeding permanently changed humanity. Every person whose ancestry traces primarily outside Africa inherits roughly 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA. Many Asian and Oceanian populations inherit additional Denisovan DNA. Some indigenous populations of Oceania possess as much as 5% Denisovan ancestry. These percentages may sound small, but scattered throughout the genome are thousands of inherited genetic fragments. Those fragments continue affecting us today. Some influence immune systems, others affect skin, hair, fat metabolism, sleep patterns, even susceptibility to certain diseases. Ancient encounters continue shaping modern biology. This revolution became possible through ancient DNA. Recovering DNA from fossils once seemed impossible. Time destroys genetic material. Contamination presents enormous challenges. Yet, improvements in sequencing technology allowed researchers to reconstruct genomes from tiny fragments preserved inside bones and teeth. The work eventually earned Swedish geneticist Svante Pääbo the 2022 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. Instead of relying solely upon fossils, scientists could now compare complete genomes between extinct humans and living people. The results fundamentally changed anthropology forever. Today, only one human species survives, Homo sapiens, but survival does not mean isolation. Inside every one of us lives a genetic record of ancient encounters. Our DNA remembers relatives long after their bones have disappeared. Neanderthals are not entirely gone. Denisovans are not entirely gone. Parts of them continue living through us. Humanity is not a story of one perfect species rising alone. It is the story of an extended family whose branches separated, reunited, exchanged genes, and ultimately merged into the people alive today.